Join the team.
Yes! Hey, this is the McGuire Review, and today we're going to be taking a look at Dragonstone Mine. Now, this one comes to us from Legion Games, as well as Jade Dragon Studios. Now, this one is in ages 5+, players 2 to 4, and time 30 minutes. So, we've had a lot of fun with this one so far. My daughter, she's 8, she absolutely loves this game. We've played it quite a few times since we picked it up at Origins. This has been out for a little while. So let's go ahead and open it up here and take a look at what we're going to find inside. You've got a nice little rule book that literally is just a front and back page. It's a very, very simple game. One thing that I do like about this is it has multiple levels of rules, and that's really nice when you play with younger players, especially players that can't read. There are some cards that are included in this game, and you can play with or without those cards. So you'll find here on this side they got a rules level for non-readers. They lay that out there for you. And then on the other side, they have a rules level number 1 and a rules level number 2, which they consider to be a competitive play, which is rule level number 2. So I like that even though it's a simplistic game, it does give you the option to have multiple different types of rule sets that are included in the base game here. You're going to find a small bag. It's going to have some information for us as a player as we go through this game. One side is going to list off the color rules, so we'll get into the gems here in a second, but each one of these gems that you mine within this game is going to have a color rule effect when you mine it for the first time. So it's the first gem you mine, has a color rule effect, and those are listed right out here in the card. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 colors in the game and color rule effects that you'll be able to execute on. And on the other side is a glossary of terms. So there's various things you're going to use as you play the game. You're going to see on these cards that you have, and it just lists out that wording here, and it tells you, okay, blast means to place a gem on top of another player's uncapped spire. Gems that can't go onto a spire, when blasted, go back into the bag. Steal, take a gem from the top of an opponent's uncapped stacks and stack it on one of your spires. So it just kind of lists out what you can and cannot do within the game and what those different terms mean. Now, when we get to the main components of the game, they do include a really nice kind of velvety gray colored bag. It is a fairly high quality bag. I was surprised on the quality of the actual bag. And then inside you will find tons of these little gems. And, you know, I love games that come with these gem components like this. You know, you may say, well, the gems could be overused in games in the market today, but you know what? It works. And I really like games that do include this component. It's very visually pleasing as you're playing the game. And I think it adds a layer of kind of flair and fun to the game. That's holistically across the board for board games, but you know, this one really needs it because it is one of the main components to this game, and you're going to be using these little wooden spires here. Now, these are actual wood, and there are 4 of them that are included in the game. I do have this one here. I've only played a 2-player game so far with this, so this one is still in its original wrapping, and they do include these little plastic strings here that keep it nice and tight in the box. You can keep those and kind of put those back on if you want to, but you don't really need to. They do fit right together and right back into the box. So the last thing that you're going to find are cards, and I do have some other cards here that were included, and I keep those separate. This is included in the base pack for anybody that buys this game, these number of cards here, but there are certain cards that are only for 3+ players. So since I've played only a 2-player game so far, I have removed those cards that are marked 3+ on them. And there's a little marking right on the bottom of the card. And I just kind of keep those separate in case I do want to play the 2-player game. I'll take those out. If we want to play 3 or 4 players, I can put those back in the main deck. And then here are going to be your deck of cards. And they are a very, very simple card. At the very top, it will show what you need to pay to actually use and execute this card if you have it in your hand. It'll give you a name of the card, and then it will tell you what that card will do. And you just literally read exactly what the card does. It's really something that can be good for you. It can mix up your gems. It could get more gems on your spire, they call it. Or it could actually kind of throw another opponent off. And I'll just show you a quick example of some of these cards, and they all look very similar. Again, having that gem of what you're going to pay for there at the very top, the name, and then the text that really tells you what that card's going to do. And it's that simple. Now again, because there's multiple different types of rule sets for this game, you don't have to use these cards if you want a simpler form game. But I do suggest playing the game with these cards, as I think it does add a lot of fun. Let's say we wanted to start a 2-player game, and regardless if it was a 2 or 3 or 4, you would follow the same process. Again, there are multiple levels of rules, so based on the level that you're playing at with the rest of your opponents, there may be a few minor tweaks to what you do, but generally this is how you're going to play the game. You're going to start off by shuffling up your Dragonstone Mine action cards here, and then each player is going to draw 2 cards. So you're going to start the game with 2 cards, and I'll explain why that's important that you do start the game with some cards, because you use these cards for multiple things, and that's another thing about this game that I like. It isn't like you just can play the card, you can actually use it to do something else as well. You will then mine and draw, so all of these gems will be in this bag, and let's say that, now I'll leave a few of them out here just to look at, but let's say this was all the gems we had for the game. Each player would then reach into the bag and what they call mine 2 gems. So you're not going to follow the color rule on this first action. So again, these cards here will list out, hey, if I draw a green, that means that I stack the Jade onto my tower, then in clockwise order, mine a gem for each other player and blast it onto their tower. Now, what's blast mean? Well, I can find that keyword here on the back, and I can say, oh, blast means I basically just put that gem on another player's tower. So you'll see that depending on what color gem you draw, that's how you're going to activate and what actions you're going to actually take. So for that first round, though, starting off, you're just kind of seeding your spire here. So you're not going to follow any of those color rules. So player 1 here drew a yellow, and I'm just going to go ahead and place that right here. And I also drew a green, which is a Jade, and let's just say I placed that right here. Now player 2 is going to go and do the same thing. Okay, I drew a yellow, and then I'm going to go and draw another one. Okay, I drew a white quartz there. So now we are ready to start the game. So what you're going to do now when it's your turn is the first thing you're going to do is draw a card. So you can put those cards right out in front of you there. So it's easily accessible to all the players that are playing. And you're going to draw a card. So now you basically have 3 cards in your hand. And then you're going to choose one of 3 things. You're either going to just take one of these cards and just discard it. So whatever card you might not want right then in the game, just go ahead and throw it down, discard it. And by doing that, you're now allowed to mine and stack 2 gems. But you're only following that color rule for the first gem that you mine. And that's an important rule you need to remember as you go through and play the game, that you're only playing the color rule on the first gem that you mine. So let's just say that I wanted to do that. I would discard and I would mine gems, playing the color rule on the first gem, and then simply reaching in, drawing another gem for that second gem, and placing it on my spire. Or I could actually pay the cost if I happen to have what it indicates right up top here with these gems. I could pay that cost from my spire, and I could actually do what it says on the card. So if I had 2 sapphires, and I got lucky, my first draw was 2 sapphires, I could pay those 2 sapphires, and I could activate more sapphires for me, which allows me to mine 6 gems, stack 5 of them, and blast the other one on your opponent's spire. So you can see that you do have some options in the game. Or the third thing you can do is simply just draw yet another card. So that may be a strategy early in the game when there aren't a lot of gems out on the spires to take the first couple turns just drawing cards. And the reason for that is you'll have a nice hand of cards, and when your opponent may be getting low on the cards, you can just continue to discard cards to continue to draw gems. I think that's a really good strategy for the end game on this one, because how the scoring works is over the course of the game, you'll be stacking these gems on your spires. And there is a strategy to this. So if you can get a spire that has all 5 of the colors, so red, blue, yellow, white, and green, that's considered a rainbow, and that's worth 5 points. You can also have a rainbow if you have all 5 colors around the very top of the spire. So at the very top gem of each one of the spires, and there are 6, so just 5 of them have to be within your colors, form a rainbow, then that's worth another 5 points. And then you get 1 point for every gem that's on a spire. So if you're the first player to fill all 6 of your spires completely. That's what kind of triggers endgame, and then each other player gets to take a final turn. At that point, scoring will happen, and you will get essentially 30 points because there are 6 spires with 5 gems per spire. You'll get 30 points for getting all of that full, and then you'll go through and say, well, how many rainbows do I have? Well, I might have 1 or 2 spires that I have all 5 colors. Okay, that's 5, 10 more points. I might have been able to get a rainbow at the very top. That's another 5 points. And then the last way you can get 5 points for a spire is if a spire is all one color. Now you may think, well, that might be easy because as I'm playing this game, I'll just be drawing these gems, and you know what? I started a yellow here, so I'm just going to go ahead and keep going yellow. And every time I draw a yellow, I'm going to put it right there because then it'll all be yellow, and that'll be worth 5 points. Well, the difficult thing to that is as you play, your opponents are going to be playing these cards, which are going to throw you off. They're going to throw your strategy off. They're going to be able to see, hey, this person's trying to build this spire with all yellows because maybe they've got, 3 on there already, and it's obvious that's what they're going for. So, I might play one of these cards that allow me to blast a gem onto another person's spire, and I'll just blast a white right on the top of that, which is going to throw that off and then not give that player the 5 points. Now, the only way that a player can kind of come back from that is if they decide to pay from their gems on their spire to play a card. And when they pay, they need to be able to get to the gems that are accessible. So if I had a card in my hand that said, for 2 yellow, you can play this particular card. I can't go down here to the bottom of my spire and say, well, I'll take these 2 off, and then I'll grab these 2 yellow, and I'll put these back on, and I'll pay that 2 yellow. It doesn't work that way. The gems have to be accessible. So I would have to have 2 yellow at the top to be able to pull off, to be able to play that and pay that for that card. So that's another thing that gets into the strategy as you play this game out is, it does matter where you position these gems, and it may not always be the best strategy to just initially go for what you kind of want. Like, oh, I want this spire to be yellow, and I want that spire to be all green, and I'm going to do my rainbow around this side, and then I'm going to fill the rest with maybe potentially rainbows, because it never actually works out that way. And what will happen is you'll get to the point near the end of the game where you're trying to be executing on that strategy, and your opponent will just totally throw you off. So that's the mechanic that I really love about this game is, one, it's very balanced. You go back and forth in this sort of battle to get all your gems stacked up on your spires, and in a way that is going to be most point advantageous for you. At the same time, the game is simple. It doesn't have a lot of components. It's easy to pull out, play. It's a very quick game. It's a great filler, and it's good for kids. It's also very visually appealing. When you pull the game out and you've got all these little gems, stacked up all over your spires, and as it builds up over time, it just has this really cool look to it that I really haven't seen in another game, particularly like this. And I'll just build this out really quick to kind of show you just how cool this starts to look once you get this all built out. Another thing that I'll mention as I build this up is there is a little hole in the very center of the spire. And it's interesting how, well, that was a good example, so perfect. What I'll show you here, and I'll dump this one, or I don't need to have to even dump it. I can just show you. You'll see that little hole there in the center, okay? And what that's for is as you're, working with these gems, they may kind of slip out of your hand, and when they do, they conveniently fall perfectly into that little hole in the center. So versus trying to kind of, fish that gem out of there and then knocking other ones off, and oh, what order was that in? Well, I don't remember. I think it was that way. You can just simply pick up the spire and the gem is right there, easily accessible, and just kind of get it out of the way. So I thought that was a really innovative way to kind of make this component. And as I was talking with Legion Games kind of about this game, they sort of explained that, that was one of the things that was kind of a pain when they were play testing. So they did modify the component to make that a lot better experience for the player. So, anytime I see that kind of stuff, that's a big thumbs up, because it means that the company actually thought through from the player's perspective, and you would think, well, obviously the designers and the publishers should do that, but that's not always the case. Now, with a lot of these smaller form factor games, again, I always call out the box is a nice small form factor. It's easy to travel with if you want to do that. Again, this is not a solo experience. You do need at least 2 players to be able to play this game. And it comes at a nice low price point, even for the really quite fantastic components that are included in this title. So Legion, great job on Dragonstone Mine, and I would love to see maybe some expansions in the future or something else come out that kind of fits into the theme of this game. I think it's done really, really well, and we've had a ton of fun with it. So that's Dragonstone Mine. If you see it out there, pick it up. Again, low price point. You won't be sorry. So hit that like, click the subscribe below to join the team, ring the bell. This has been the McGuire Review, and we'll see you next time.